is Lydia, the lifestyle coach, and welcome to our fun little series about the 12 days of treatments diet industry gave to me. And we're going to talk about an honest and real review about the pros and the cons and the does it work with intermittent fasting. This is a very popular one right now. The idea of intermittent fasting is you don't eat for a window of time and then you have an eating window. So it talks about the health benefits or the weight loss result of that you're eating fewer calories in a day because you're only eating during a certain time. That's the theory behind it, or that there are health benefits to letting your body have like a rest from digesting. So those are sort of the ideas around intermittent fasting. And so how it works is that you just like you eat during a certain window and then you have time that you're not eating at all. Now, there are a couple of things that I want to note right up front about intermittent fasting is that intermittent fasting tends to be extremely attractive to people with eating disorders because it is a way to not eat. It's like with alcohol, you can be like, I'm just not going to drink alcohol so that I won't be an alcoholic anymore. And I'm just going to cut it out, right? You can't do that with food. You have to keep eating. So intermittent fasting is a way to just like put it out of your mind of like, oh, I don't eat during this time. And so if you're obsessing with food all the time, then it's very attractive to people who don't want to obsess about food and who are trying to fix their relationship with food. Now, it is also one of the most effective diets in creating eating disorders. I'll say that again. Intermittent fasting will create eating disorders so quickly because you are teaching your body on purpose the binge restrict cycle. If you have a great relationship with food and you just want to skip a couple of meals and eat later on and it's a great lifestyle for you, that's one thing. But if you are looking to intermittent fasting to try to fix your relationship with food, it tends to do the exact opposite because you are restricting, you are not eating anything for a long period of time. And then you have a last chance, certain window when you can eat. So that's the only time you have to binge. And so you binge while you can eat, and then you stop and you restrict again. And what this turns into is a binge and restrict cycle. It can turn into bulimia. It can turn into binge eating disorder. Like it's a very quick way to perpetuate awful relationships with food. And it's attractive to people who already have a distorted relationship with food. So intermittent fasting is like, we've had people many times come to us that didn't used to have an eating disorder. And they're like, and then I did intermittent fasting and now I have an eating disorder. It's weird how those things happen at the same time. Just like, that was not a coincidence. So let's talk a little bit about the pros, the cons, and why it does or doesn't work. So let's go ahead and Jen, tell us a little bit about what were the pros and cons for you about intermittent fasting?
Well, I don't know if it's a pro, but I'm a very organized, on schedule, regimented, routine kind of gal. So I felt like I was more organized if I have breakfast at 9, like if I plan my meals and I have breakfast at 9 and then a snack at 11 and lunch at 1, but then at 3 o'clock is when the afternoon binge thoughts start going. So like then I go through all the crazy binge habits, all that stuff. And then like my goal was not to eat after 8 p.m. Then I go to bed, get up, make coffee, and not eat until 9 o'clock the next morning. So I would fill myself with as much food as possible between like the hours of 4 and 8 p.m. Go to sleep. Don't get good sleep because I have to prop myself up and I have food out here all night. But if I wait till 9 o'clock in the morning, all that should be dissolved, like digested, right? I don't know. And then you can't figure out why you can't sleep at night because I ate enough for like 4 grown men. And I don't know. Did not work for me, but I've done it for years and years and years and years, like very regimented. I mean, I can tell you that those were the hours that I would put as much food in myself as possible and then be on schedule and regimented and wake up with a new thought every single morning. Today's going to be different. And then it never was. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't ever look at the clock anymore on what time is what. So yeah,
Celebrating that.
I
That's
like it a lot.
awesome. And thank you so much for sharing that. Because the like again, if you have a completely neutral relationship with food and you're a normal eater and you're just like, okay, this is a way that I want to eat, that's one thing. But like when you have disordered eating or when you have any sort of struggle like that, it's not like you're going to eat fewer calories because you're not letting yourself eat for certain hours of the day. You're just going to eat a ton more calories while you're letting yourself, I'll put that in quotes, eat. So that's oftentimes what it turns into. So yeah, absolutely. Leanne, tell us a little bit about your experience.
Ooh. Well, I liked the general idea of intermittent fasting because they say you eat for 8 hours, you digest for 8 hours, and then your body heals for 8 hours. So I really wanted to jump on board that. And I would eat, I'd start at 1 or 2 in the afternoon. So I wouldn't eat all morning. All I would have was either coffee and water or coffee and seltzer water all day up until 1 or 2, and then I would eat until about 8 o'clock at night, and that was it. And it seems like though dinner would be, well, lunch would be a good sized lunch, dinner would be a good sized dinner, and then bingy snacks after that. But I was good with not actually putting food in my mouth between 8 p.m. and 1 a.m. But I mean 1 p.m. But it never, ever, ever caused me to lose 1 single ounce. I never lost an ounce and I never felt any better. But it was a fad, and then I had friends doing it. So I jumped on board and wanted to do it. Never, ever worked for me.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And Data, did you say you had done intermittent fasting? Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was initially kind of attracted to it because, similar to what Leanne just said, and Jen, there's a schedule to it, and so there's kind of removing some of the thought, there's not the planning. Of course, during, when I had a lot of the disordered eating, I was always hungry. I was always just starving. So I was excited because I was like, okay, great. I just have to fix the times when I eat. That's so easy. That's not the same as like restricting food, or choosing what I'm going to eat. I can eat whatever happens to come by during those hours. And I just, there's no limit on the quantity. So I was excited about that because I'm starving at this time, so hungry all the time, ravenous. And so that was one of the pros. I would say the main con, though, for me was that, just like you mentioned, it really does make you hyper focused on food. I remember, I would have a decent commute to work that involved biking and a decent amount of physical activity. And so I would arrive at the office really exhausted, no breakfast. And I've never really been a breakfast person generally, not normally hungry in the morning, but when you're on intermittent fasting, you are hungry in the morning, it's just like, because you know that you can't eat, and so you're definitely hungry because your brain is like, well, you can't eat, so I'm gonna be hungry right now, even if I wasn't before. So that came back, and I was like, dude, I don't even have breakfast normally, but now my body's like, please give me breakfast. So I'm just sitting there, I'm begging until 12:30, like, come on, I'm dying, so I'd be so hungry, and then of course I would be so excited because as soon as the clock struck, I'm like dashing to get my lunch. I'm like filling up containers. Like I just need as much as possible. And then of course, like I would have classes or other obligations in the evening. And so I'm trying to kind of like eat as much food as I can so that I can get to my class and have it all done before the cutoff time, which I think for me was like 7 or 8, so and then yeah, it was just always, I would say that for me, of all of the things I tried, that definitely probably contributed the most to trying to eat large quantities at once, whether or not I was not hungry. Because by that point, I tried enough stuff that I could confidently say, okay, I'm not really that hungry right now. Or, I am hungry right now. But I would say with IF, it doesn't matter if I'm hungry right now. I have to eat right now. Otherwise, there's no more food coming until 24 hours from now, or it was 16 or whatever the
Yeah.
numbers were. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And that is, it's a scarcity that gets created of like, okay, well, I'm going to completely ignore my own body's signals. It doesn't matter if I'm hungry or not. I have to eat right now because I'm not going to be able to in a minute, right? And so, yeah, this is the thing that we tend to do with dieting is like you just go from, oh my gosh, I'm so like tired of cutting out my carbs. I have to do something that I can have carbs. Okay, I'll do intermittent fasting because at least there isn't a restriction on that. So now I'm doing a restriction of time where I can only eat during this amount of time. And it's like, well, I just you really hate being restricted in the time that I can eat. So I need to, do something else. So we just go round and round and round instead of just like healing our relationship with food, right? So yeah, thank you guys so much for your incredible review there of your true experience with intermittent fasting. And just really quickly, like why didn't that work to heal your relationship with food? So Data, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think that it did not help with well, it actually, like at that point, I had started to learn what it was like to truly feel hungry and then um, I was starting to learn the difference between true hunger and just, oh, I'm wanting to eat right now. So I had started that little mini process. It wasn't as strong as it is now, but it was starting. And IF just completely put a bomb all over that because, it essentially encourages you to be like, nope, that doesn't matter. You have to eat right now. So I would say that that would be the main reason it didn't work, as well as schedules change throughout the day, so it was one of those things of like, okay, if I'm going to have a really late night, that means, say I'm going to go to dinner with friends. Now I can't eat until 3 p.m. or something like that. And I'm, waking up at 6 or 7 and I have to go essentially through an entire workday with no food. So that it just made it worse. I don't recall if I lost any weight. I think that one thing that I liked about it was that I did feel lighter, like during the time that I wasn't eating, obviously, because I'm freaking no food. But I did like that part, but it quickly became an emptiness, like a hollowness, instead of like, I feel like I ate a good meal, like it was like hollow, I was just
Yeah.
so hungry. Even more than before. It was like I went from having 4 lunches and still not being full. And now I'm even hungrier than that. Like, how is that possible? Oh, it's terrible.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And like Jen, what would you say just like is your number one reason why it didn't fix your relationship with food?
So I didn't even know the intermittent fasting was a thing until you talk about the description of it and then you describe it. And I'm like, oh, I've been doing that forever. Just not as a planned diet. It was just a wake up in the morning with a good resolve that today I'm going to do a better job. Today I'm going to make this work. Today is the day that I'm not going to binge. I'm going to do it. And then like as the day goes through, it all falls apart and crumbles, and all of that is so devastating and disappointing at the end of the day. And then it's just a cycle over and over. Every day I feel like a failure at the end of the day. But in the morning, I'm okay, today's the day. And I don't have that disappointment and shame in myself every single day at the end of the day anymore.
You just celebrate that of just like being able to go to bed and feel good and feel like a success and wake up the next morning and not have anything to start over. Like Jen, really want to honor like your journey in that and just so excited for you there. And I know like, yeah, we've been there. Like that's the hard thing about these cycles, right? It's just like every day you just feel like a failure over and over and over. And what a joy to be out of that. So love it, Jen. Thank you. And Leanne, what would you say is the reason that that didn't fix your relationship with food?
Well, now with intermittent fasting, I wasn't restricting types of food, but now I was restricting times to eat. And so I had to think within those 6 hours that I was going to be eating that I had to get the perfect foods in there, that I had to get everything in that I wanted to eat for the day. So I found myself obsessing over food more than ever. Whereas you think intermittent fasting would be, okay, so from nighttime until whenever you decide for your time, you're going to eat the next day, noon or whatever, 1 or 2 for me. You'd think, okay, like, out of sight, out of mind. But no, it was so much more obsessively thinking about my food choices. And then if I didn't have the right foods within that 6 hour period, I'd be like building up all of this excitement for going out to get the best foods for the next day when I could eat in that 6 hour period. So it really, really did not help my relationship with food at all.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Mm.
Amen. Amen. So, oh, you guys, thank you so much for your incredible just wisdom and experience and sharing. So incredibly spot on, and so excited to see you guys for our next episode of the 12 days of treatments, and just the good and the bad and the what works and the what doesn't. And we will see you guys soon. Bye.